Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya Asatar Sata Shri Srimada's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaur Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, Jai and Vijay cursed by the sages, text 24. Tat Tena Bishtam Eva Sattva said here, Sattva need here, Viditsaha, Chema, Janaya, Nija Shakti Bir, Udahritare, Udhritare, Naitavata, Shri Adipater, Bata, Vishvabhartus, Teja, Chatam, Svan Avanatasya, Sa, Te, Vinodaha, Tatena Bishtam Ivisatvanidher Viditso. Okay. Tatena Bishtam Ivisatvasidher Vidatso. Chemam Janaya Nija Shakti Bir Udra Itare. Naitavata Triadipater Bhata Vishvabhartus. Teja Chatam Svananatasya Sate Vinodaha. Tate nabishtamiva sattva nidirviditso. Shemam janaya nija shakti virudritare. Naita vata triadipater bata vishvabartus. Teja chatam hi vanatasya sate vinodaha. Tatena bishtamiva sattva nidirviditso. Shemam janaya nija shakti virudritare. Naita vata triadipater bata vishvabartus. Teja chatam tvananatasya sate vinodaha. Vaishnavis, that destruction of the path of auspiciousness. Te, by you, anabishtam, is not liked, eva as sattva nidehe, the reservoir of all goodness, viditsaho, desiring to do, Kshamam, good, Janaya, for the people in general, Nija Shakti Bhi, by your own potencies, Udahrita, destroyed, Adehe, the opposite element, Na, not, Etavata, by this, Triadipate, of the proprietor of the three kinds of creation. Bata, O Lord, Vishvabhartahu, the maintainer of the universe. Tejaha, potency. Jatam, reduced. To, but. Avanatasya, submissive. Saha, that. Te, your. Vinodaha, pleasure. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. Dear Lord, you never want the auspicious path to be destroyed, for you are the reservoir of all goodness. Just to benefit people in general, you destroy the evil element by your mighty potency. You are the proprietor of the three creations and the maintainer of the entire universe. Therefore, your potency is not reduced by your submissive behavior. Rather, by submission, you exhibit your transcendental pastimes. Purport. Lord Krishna is never reduced in his position by becoming a cowherd boy or by offering respect to Sudama Brahmana or his other devotees like Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev, Maharaj Yudhisthira, and the Pandava's mother, Kunti. Everyone knew that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, yet the behavior was exemplary. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Satchidananda Vigraha. His form is completely spiritual, full of bliss and knowledge, and it is eternal. Because the living entities are his parts and parcels, originally they also belong to the same quality of eternal form as the Lord. But when they come in contact with Maya, the material potency, due to their forgetfulness of their existential constitution, due to their forgetfulness, their existential constitution is covered. We should try to understand the appearance of Lord Krishna in this spirit as the Kumaras pray to him. He is eternally a cowherd boy at Vrindavan. He is eternally the leader of the battle of Kurukshetra, and he is eternally the opulent prince of Dwarka and the lover of the damsels of Vrindavan. All his appearances are meaningful because they show his real characteristics to the conditioned souls who have forgotten their relationship with the Supreme Lord. He does everything for their benefit. The force exhibited in the battle of Kurukshetra by the desire of Krishna and through the agency of Krishna through the agency of Arjuna, was also necessary, because when people become too irreligious, force is required. Nonviolence in this respect is rascaldom. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sorry, I've got a little tickling in my throat. What's being discussed here is the question of whether, by being submissive to the four Kumaras and respecting their desires, is the Supreme Lord becoming diminished in his position? And the answer is no, because his position is special. In ordinary life, a person's position is diminished if they appear to be doing something that's not appropriate to their position in society. Like when I was younger, before I became a devotee, I was in the Navy. And actually in all the military, they have rules and regulations that say officers should not fraternize with enlisted people. In other words, they have very strict regulations, because ultimately the military is meant for warfare and people have to follow orders. And if the officers become too familiar with the enlisted people, then there's some danger that their position will be diminished, their authority will be diminished. Therefore, they have some strict rules against becoming, officers becoming too friendly with the enlisted men. And there are similar situations, in interpersonal dealings. Parents have to maintain a little bit of authority over children. They, in a corporation, there are rules and regulations about people who are in authority over others having interpersonal relationships with them that are inappropriate. So Krishna is not in such a position, because ultimately he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yad yada triti shestas tatadivatrojana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanavartate. Krishna explains to Arjuna in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that whatever the person who's in authority does, whatever the person who's in a superior position does, the common people follow. They take it as that's what's to be done. So Krishna is saying, therefore, I follow the rules and regulations of society, because if I didn't, it would set a bad example. Nevertheless, uh, were also advised, Srila Prabhupada states in the purports, that were advised not to in all circumstances follow what the great personality does, because sometimes the greatest personality, Krishna, does things that apparently from one point of view contradict the rules and regulations of society, like Krishna going into the forest and dancing with the young gopis of Vrindavan village. This is not to be imitated. Rather, we're advised to follow the instructions of the great personalities. So, Krishna is not diminished in his position when he does things like that, because he can, like, we can't imitate Krishna's activities. Like, Krishna will lift Govardhan Hill, but we can't do that. So, we're advised to follow the instructions of the great souls. It's like, it's mentioned here, Krishna wasn't diminished in his position by being submissive to the 4 Kumaras. And it's also mentioned that he wasn't diminished in his activities with the gopis, or by offering respect to Sudam Brahmana or others. It's like Lord Chaitanya also did some things. I was just reading in the Chaitanya Charitamrita how in Navadvip, in Mayapur, the young girls would go to the banks of the Ganges at a certain time of the year, and they would offer worship to Lord Shiva in order to get good husbands. And young Lord Chaitanya would go there and he would tell them, "What are you doing offering worship to Lord Shiva? Offer worship to me." And some of them kind of took it seriously right in the beginning, and they began to do that. And Lord Chaitanya said to them, "Very nice. I give you the benediction that you'll have a nice husband, young, rich, intelligent, funny. He'll, just what the type of husband they would desire." And some of the girls were a little suspicious. They wouldn't immediately do it. So Lord Chaitanya gave them a curse. He said, "Because you're not worshiping me, I cursed you that you'll have a very old husband with 4 co-wives." And he also gave the so-called good girls a benediction that they would have, all their children would be very intelligent and smart. So, but as for the other ones, when he gave this curse, they began to think, well, maybe he knows something, maybe he is somebody or something, maybe we better do what he says. So eventually they also surrendered to him. But it's interesting what Krishnadas Kaviraj says in this connection. He said, when this became known to the people in general in Navadvip and Mayapur, his position wasn't diminished. Although in a normal setting, if some teenage boy went and did such a thing, he'd be condemned. But because Lord Chaitanya was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he had the ability to do such things, although it's not recommended that we try to imitate Lord Chaitanya in his pastimes like that. So another point that's made in here is that nonviolence is sometimes rascaldom. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada says nonviolence or ahimsa is the first quality of a devotee. It's the most important thing that we're meant to, as devotees, we're meant to eliminate, violence from the world. We don't want people subjected to violence. But in some circumstances, Srila Prabhupada made the point, and Krishna makes the point, that violence is necessary. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, it's on a battlefield. Arjuna is being asked to fight. Mamanusmara yudhya cha, remember me and fight. So Srila Prabhupada would criticize Gandhi because he tried to prove non-violence from the Bhagavad Gita. He said, Srila Prabhupada said, how can he try to do that? It's set on a battlefield. It isn't some imaginary interpretation. You can still go to that battlefield today. Prabhupada named the train stop on the Indian railways where you get off at Kurukshetra, and I've visited that battlefield, and we have ISKCON has a nice center there, I believe now. So it's something that Srila Prabhupada really wanted. So we can't say that in all circumstances we think everyone should be non-violent. In Varnashram society, there is the Kshatriya class, and they're meant to engage in violence. The Brahmanas, they are supposed to be peaceful. But the Kshatriyas, in order to protect society, they sometimes must engage in violence according to religious principles. And Krishna himself engages in incredibly violent acts. But according to Shastra and according to the Acharyas, everything Krishna does is auspicious, whether it's violence or non-violence. Like in his appearance as Krishna, he killed many demons, he engaged in warfare. Now, in his appearance as Lord Chaitanya, he wasn't meant for that. I mean, generally when Krishna appears in this world in his different incarnations, he appears in a Kshatriya family if he's appearing in a human-like form. But in the case of his appearance as Lord Chaitanya, he appeared in a Brahmin family. So he started his Sankirtan movement, and when he started his Sankirtan movement, there was some opposition, like Jagai and Madhai. They became violent towards Lord Nityananda. They threw some pottery at him and cut his head. And Lord Chaitanya, as is shown up in a painting up there, he was angry. He was immediately going to throw his Sudarshan chakra at these rascals. But he was persuaded, no, 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 this is the age of Kali. Everyone has this demoniac characteristic. And if you kill him, you have to kill everybody. So he restrained his tendency to react like that. Now, there's a sense in which there's a special sense in Lord Chaitanya's movement and just in general in which we are non-violent. And that means by preaching. If we're preaching, we're relieving people of suffering in the cycle of birth and death. Because even if we could imagine we could make peace among all the nations in the world so that everyone was at peace, there were no wars going on. And just imagine that we could make a society in which there were no criminals committing violent acts. Nobody was murdering anyone else. Still, people would be subjected to birth, death, old age, and disease. They would be, Maya, the material energy, would be still killing them all. So how do we bring people to a position where they don't suffer from birth, death, old age, and disease? It's only by spreading Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And if we're not doing that, we're engaged in violence. We're allowing people to be killed. And what to speak of the other types of violence that go on in human society. Of course, we're not just concerned with violence among human beings. In the Krishna consciousness movement, we see that all living entities are to be respected because there's a soul and the super soul in the hearts of all of them. Pandita Samadarshana, a wise person sees, yes, that in every living thing there is a soul. So we don't think there should be unnecessary violence against the animals, for example. Srila Prabhupada makes that point many times, that if people engage in needless slaughtering of animals, then that's going to come back on them in terms of violence. So we have kind of an expanded conception of what it means to be nonviolent in the Krishna consciousness movement. So those are some of the points that are made in this verse and purport. Any comments or questions? Okay, Sri, oh, you have your hand up?
Anyways, in the purport you read how when the living entity comes in contact with Maya, then they forget their actual position. So wouldn't that indicate that at a certain point we remembered Krishna, we were in the spiritual world and we were remembering Krishna and then we forgot?
Yes, we're here because of forgetfulness of Krishna. And that means, I think as stated here, because the living entities are his parts and parcels, originally they also belong to the same quality of eternal form as the Lord. But when they come in contact with Maya, the material potency, due to their forgetfulness, their existential constitution is covered. So, generally, I take that statement to mean we were with Krishna and we've forgotten. Some may have other opinions as to what it means. They can say, well, although we're meant to be remembering Krishna, we've always been in this position of forgetfulness. They cite terms like nitya baddha, eternally conditioned. So, whatever one's position, I would say everyone can agree we're not with Krishna at the present moment. And it's because of our forgetfulness of Krishna. So let's remember Krishna and go home back to Godhead. Whatever one's position is about when it happened, where it happened. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.